Hello, everyone. It looks like we've got a good group in the room, so let's go ahead and get started. I'd like to welcome you all to today's webinar, Leveraging Alternative Pathways to Meet Students Where They Are. I'm Elizabeth Warner, Kale's Senior Director of Event Operations, and it's my pleasure to kick off today's webinar. Kale, a nonprofit membership organization, was founded 46 years ago to help organizations succeed by providing expertise, resources, and solutions that effectively support adult learners as they navigate on and off ramps between education and employment. We partner with entities across the adult learner ecosystem to help create actionable career pathways along the journey of lifelong learning and meaningful work. To that end, today's webinar features Burke Smith, CEO of Straighterline, and Donna Souter, CSU Pueblo, and Elizabeth Johnson from Post University, joining us to discuss barriers, solutions, and outcomes in helping adult learners successfully enroll, persevere, and complete their degree. Before we get started, a couple quick housekeeping notes. Attendees are muted. You're not on video. We'd love to see you join into the conversation and enter into the chat. So if you want to introduce yourself, please do. If you have questions, feel free to enter them in the Q&A and speakers will answer them throughout the presentation. This webinar is recorded, so everyone who signed up for it will receive a recording within a week. And with that, I'd like to hand it over to Burke Smith. Welcome, Burke.
Thank you. Thank you. Welcome, everybody. This will be hopefully an interesting webinar and look forward to your participation. I'm going to start by introducing my co-panelists as well as then setting some context and then turning it over to them to answer questions and about each other and about their programs. So first, Elizabeth Johnson is the CAO and Provost at Post University in Connecticut. And Donna Souter-Hodge is the VP of Operations and Advancement at CSU Pueblo. I'm Burke Smith. I'm the CEO and founder of Straighterline. A little bit on Straighterline, we offer extremely affordable online coursework that helps institutions both increase yield and persistence while helping students decrease the cost and risk of pursuing a degree. We put these courses into private labeled pathway programs that schools can manage and control and direct different types of students to help schools achieve those ends. And what you might be asking is, well, what is a pathway program? And if so, you're in the right place. And it's probably best to start with what it isn't. It is not an international program, though in theory it could be, but it's not students coming from abroad taking a few courses as a pathway into the US. It's not a set of courses that then sort of yield certificates for employment. So it's not a structured pathway to an employer. What it is a set of courses, usually for credit, delivered differently than your traditional school model, different price, different format, different way of enrolling, in a way that lowers the cost and risk for students and is a place where you can send students who have some sort of problem enrolling at your institution. And the kinds of problems those could be are the kinds of students. It could be students that need to be admitted but don't have the requisite credits or GPA or requirements. It could be students that are already enrolled and have some sort of problem, like they're running out of financial aid, they have prerequisites to be filled, scheduling problems for certain courses. It could be students that have dropped out and need to bridge back in, but it's a specific thing that does not look like your traditional college coursework, but is a way to solve problems for students prior to enrolling or re-enrolling. So a couple last things about adult students, and then I will ask Elizabeth and Donna to join in. Just a few things about why these pathways are important for adults, students in general, particularly adults. What we know is that adult learners are busy. They have busy lives, work, family, health, you name it. And so flexibility is important. So sometimes students cannot fulfill the requirements of a traditional school and other models need to be constructed. They are cost conscious. They're usually paying out of pocket, or if not, they don't have the resources that you might if you're relying on parent dollars or even government money. And so for them, list price, payment structure, whether all at once or on a subscription basis, and credit and transfer to make the work count is important. And lastly, they're employment focused. They want to make sure that what they're doing counts in their career. And we're not going to go into that in this conversation because it's sort of assumed that if they've made a decision to go or inquire about your institution, that's something that they've already are already settled, or at least are thinking about for themselves. So let me stop there, and I will direct first question to Beth. So, and then the same question to Donna after that. But Beth, tell us about your program at Post. Tell us about Post, and then tell us about your program at Post, and then we'll ask the same to Donna.
Sounds good. Thank you so much, Burke, and welcome everyone. Very excited to share with you a little bit about our Post Academy at Post University. A little bit about myself. As Burke mentioned, I am the provost at Post University in Waterbury, Connecticut, and I have been at Post for 15 years and have been serving in this role for a little bit more than 5. In that role, I oversee academic affairs, which includes our 5 schools, including 2 new ones, the American Sentinel College of Nursing and Health Sciences, and I'll get back to that one, and the School of Continuing Education. Also oversee the registrar's office and our academic support services, such as the Center for Academic Success and the library. When you think about Post University, just to kind of give you some background there, which is going to tell the tale as to why we went in the direction we did with our academy, we offer associate degrees, bachelor's degrees, master's degrees, and doctoral level degrees. Our faculty model is a little bit different than most schools. Each of our programs has a chair that oversees it, and they report into assistant or associate deans, as well as a dean for each school. But we do have about 800 associate faculty, and those are the lifeblood of our university. Those are the folks teaching our students and making sure that they are understanding the content associated with their degree. We offer a couple of different modalities. We have a main campus 16-week semester that's offered to traditional students, 18 to 24-year-olds. We have an 8-week asynchronous term that is offered to our adult learners. We also have a 16-week competency-based education style of semester for our nursing courses. In addition, we have a robust selection of support services for our online learners. We've been offering online education for about 25 years, which means that as we have increased our online offerings, our services have scaled up with us. So it's made it a little bit easier to stay on top of it. Our online advisors, we have about 150 of those overseeing our students. We have 200 admissions representatives that are recruiting interested students. And getting back to our advisors for a moment, just to give you a flavor for the varying types, we have new student advisors who are supporting our new students as they come in, programmatic advisors for students after they've gotten through that first year experience. And then we have something really cool called a SAP specialist, a satisfactory academic progress specialist. And these are advisors who are specifically dedicated to students who have gotten caught up in not being able to meet satisfactory academic progress. So the moment that a student goes on warning for satisfactory academic progress, they start working with this specialist. The other big focus that we have at Post that drives our academy is our first year experience and our foundation course sequence. We know that with adult learners, that first year is paramount to whether or not they are going to find success in college because they have so many competing priorities. In college and classes are not often at the top, and that's got to be okay. And so this is where we do see the most student stopouts. And again, that's in alignment with national trends. So at Post, we've identified that this is our biggest rock to address retention concerns that we see. Put together a foundation course sequence to help get our students through that first couple of courses. And we've established a new goal of 100% completion of orientation. And I say new, we literally talked about that for the first time yesterday. So this is hot off the presses. So how does this all relate to Post Academy and what it is that we're building with Straighterline? Well, we created Post Academy in order to create alternative pathways for our adult learners to address the resources that we didn't have to meet our student needs. I mentioned that we do have a lot of them. As I said, we've kind of grown up with online education, but there's a couple of places where we needed a little bit of help, and that's where Straighterline came in and helped us to create our academy. Our goal, of course, is to keep these students connected with Post or to reconnect those who have disconnected from Post. So students who didn't meet our admissions requirements, we have a pathway for them. Students who stopped participating in their first few courses and stopped out, we have a pathway for them. And students who were dismissed for not making satisfactory academic progress and we weren't able to approve their appeal for whatever reason, we have a pathway for them too. And I think I'll talk about each of those pathways in just a bit. I'm going to let Donna introduce herself.
Thanks, Beth. So my name is Donna Souter-Hodge. I actually started my career on the faculty side of the house, and I'll give you a little random tidbit. I just saw Sarah from University of Wisconsin Stout jump online, one of our participants. Her chancellor, Dr. Catherine Frank, was my first boss as a tenured faculty member in the Department of English and World Languages at Colorado State University Pueblo. She is now the chancellor at UW Stout, but I credit or blame or whatever her with sort of my entrepreneurial spirit because I think that is one of the things about CSU Pueblo that's kept me here for the last 15 years. But I think it's also probably gives you a little bit of an indication how you start out as a professor of classical rhetoric in the Department of English and World Languages, and you wind up doing not only facilities, auxiliary services, grants, and contracts, but fundraising. But that's the kind of campus that Colorado State University Pueblo is. It's probably the kind of campus most of you work at. And I think for us, the appeal of this concept of pathways was something we had embraced, really years before Straighter Line was even part of the picture. So I'll tell you a little bit about Colorado State University Pueblo. We're a regional comprehensive in Southern Colorado. Beautiful Pueblo, Colorado has a lot to offer, but we are a blue collar town. Our history is in the steel mill industry. So when we start talking about our community, who has sought a 4-year degree, and who might want to, the people who are looking to reskill and upskill, the challenges our community writ large will face in the next 10 years as we get rid of our Comanche 3 plant, our coal industry starts to change and go away. These are real issues that we're talking about, not just at Colorado State University Pueblo, but across our community. It's a very diverse community. Our campus is a Hispanic serving institution. We rely heavily on Department of Education grants, Title III and Title V grant funding, but the vast majority of our students rely on that Title IV funding, right? More than 70% of our students work full-time jobs. They may be traditionally aged, but they are not living traditional lives. The challenges and opportunities that they bring to our campus are real. So for us at CSU Pueblo, when we launched a new vision at the beginning of 2018, it was a 10-year plan, which I think is probably a little unique in higher ed, but the idea is that it doesn't, you don't get where you are overnight, and you don't change where you are or give yourself a new direction that quickly either. So really admitting that we had major infrastructure things to address, that we needed to talk about what serving students in this next, whatever the iteration of our world was going to be very complicated and would look different. And all of this was exacerbated because of COVID. So everything we thought we knew before COVID, it didn't really change. It just became more critical and more urgent in that moment. We're a pretty traditional school in that we are a regional comprehensive part of a larger Colorado State system here in Colorado, but we serve this region of Southern Colorado, and that extends really into the Southwest, into New Mexico and others. That means that when we talk about pathways, we're not simply talking about the pathway for an adult learner or the ways that even Post has been thinking about this. We're using pathways at Colorado State University Pueblo as a way to talk about the various ways any student makes their path into a 4-year institution. But the truth is that's true for 2-year institutions too. For us, it means talking about what transfer agreements are going to look like. It means talking about an adult learner who wants to reskill and upskill and may not necessarily be seeking a degree, but who wants to plug into a 4-year institution and the kind of options that we have. It means that we have to talk about the students who we don't accept. And when I say the students we don't accept, we accept 90% of the students who apply to CSU Pueblo. And that's important because I think that historically we thought of that as, maybe this is a little too strong, but almost as something to be embarrassed about. Like we accept 90% of the students, so we're not being, we're not being picky about things. And I came from the faculty side of the house, so I know the concerns faculty have start with things like you're accepting students who aren't prepared for the college classroom. Those students are not college ready. That's what we've said for so many years, right? Well, the reality is, and what we know now, and what we all should be embracing, is that it isn't that the students aren't college ready, it's that the colleges aren't ready for the students. So what is that going to look like for us? It's thinking about the different pathways. It's thinking about the various touch points where students have an opportunity to come back to an institution to start fresh. And because our mission is all about access and affordability, it's making the possibility of a 4-year degree on every wall in Southern Colorado a reality. For us, Straighterline proposed, I think, what was one pathway. The academy concept was one way. And for us, a little bit different than the way Beth just talked about post approaching this. For us, it is about an enrollment opportunity, which is not just this business model. It's about how many students can we serve and who have we not approached or been working close enough with. Those students, the 10% we don't accept. What is their pathway to an institution? Do we believe that higher ed should be accessible to everyone? Well, the answer is, of course, yes. But if we believe that, we have to sort of put our money where our mouths are and figure out a way for them into a 4-year degree. And so for the vast majority of them, that means some way to quickly understand what kinds of strengths they bring to the 4-year institution. That is, a lot of our students, when we talk about adult learners, they have myriad experience, right? They've worked as bookkeepers, they've had jobs and families, and they've lived these really rich lives. How do we value that as an institution? How do we give them, credit, not necessarily course credit, but that we recognize and respect what it is they bring to the table? We think it starts with figuring out a way to quickly and efficiently at a low cost point, get them into a traditional classroom setting, whether it's online, hybrid, or in person. And of course, for us, pre-pandemic, the vast majority of our classes were in person, and the concept of online was still one we were really struggling with embracing. That lived primarily in a continuing education, extended studies kind of model. And now it's something that we're seeing very quickly. Our faculty have innovated around. And of course, that opens up a whole new wealth of opportunities for our students, because here's the other thing that I think we'll continue to talk about today. If you accept those students, you create a concept of an academy, and you suggest to them that if you do 1, 2, 3, 4 things and you get these courses under your belt, we'll accept you into the institution. You better have a way for them to be successful at the institution. And I think that's a really important piece of this that mattered to us. What did a partnership with a group like Straighterline really look like? And how could we model other services and other academic programs to serve those same students? Because if they're expecting 24/7 help desk wraparound services and everything online through the academy concept, what does it look like when now you're just drop bang into a traditional classroom model where we're kind of 8 to 5? We don't have someone you can call when you can't log into Blackboard at 2 in.the morning, but that happens to be when you can do your homework. So I think that's a really important piece to us too, and things that we're still working through and that we'll continue to develop as our partnership with Straighterline develops. So I'm really happy to be here today and happy to keep this conversation going, and delighted to answer any questions we can.
Excellent. Let me interject a couple of sort of details, maybe clarifying details, and then a couple of general sort of points, and then talk about your specific experiences. So the clarifying details, we call it an academy internally, but really there's no right nomenclature. It could be academy, it could be bridge, it could be pathway, it could be earned admission, whatever it is that strikes your fancy. But it's the same concept. It's a series of 2 to 6 courses that yield a certain enrollment or re-enrollment outcome for the student that usually count for credit. And to give you kind of a picture of that, again, it could be students who aren't ready to be enrolled, take the sort of entry math, entry writing, and a couple of healthcare courses if that's of their interest, or a couple of business courses if that's of their interest. And when they do transfer that in, they get credit for it. Students want credit. And so telling them that they will not get credit for the coursework is not a great message for them. They're paying differently. So it's, Straighterline has always been a subscription service. And so they're usually paying somewhere around, $125 to $150 per month. And it's branded under the institution's name. So it's the Post-University Academy, it's a CSU Pueblo Academy, which allows the school to control both which students are referred into it, the courses that are part of that pathway, and then also sort of varying other communication and sort of branding things that are relevant, but it puts the school in control. So that's kind of a picture of what it is. A few things more general. There's a stat that I love. Any given day, about 25% of Straighterline's enrollments are re-enrollments. So these are students that stopped midway or even took one course, stopped, dealt with whatever's going on in life, and then came back and re-enrolled. And that's fine, because that's the life of adult students. They have other obligations. It's not a sort of a single line, come and sort of take 16-week coursework. But if that happened at a college, that'd be a dropout. And that student would have lost their tuition. They would have dropped out. They have whatever psychological sort of damage comes from that, not to mention black marks on their transcript and possibly put Title IV at risk. So it's a high risk decision to both enroll and to drop out. And this reduces that risk. And kind of what's happened over the years, Straight Line's been around since 2008. We've sort of seen the growth of what I'll call unaccredited options that are now available to students. And 10 years ago, it was controversial, and sort of the worlds were set as like college and non-college, and these two are going to fight it out, and Godzilla versus King Kong, and see what happens. But what's happened is, which sort of makes sense, is that you're finding the best of both worlds. And so this is a way that schools can integrate unaccredited pathways for credit to drive yield persistence and better student outcomes, especially when students have lots of choices that they didn't have a decade ago. So let me stop there, go back to you, Beth, and you can talk about kind of your internal process for starting this and other details as they may emerge.
I would love to. Thank you. First, Donna, can I just say I'm listening to you and I'm inspired. I took so many notes, so I'm getting quite a bit out of this webinar already. Thank you. When we look at Post Academy, to give you a feel for the development process, it did take us about 9 months of wonderful collaborative work to get the design together, to get the website together, the process together, how we were going to refer, what it was all going to look like. And we launched in 2021. And when I say it was collaborative, I don't just mean between the Provost Council and Straighterline. The Straighterline folks were very clear that we needed to have people from across our campus involved in it and getting buy-in and ensuring that everybody understood what we were looking to build, and more importantly, why we were looking to build it. What were the things that we were trying to solve by putting Post Academy in place and making it available to our students? And that was incredible advice, and it worked very well. We had admissions reps involved in the design, advisors involved in the design, faculty involved in the design, and it was primarily led by our assistant provost, Dana Wilkie, and she did a phenomenal job of bringing all of these individuals together. Marketing was there so that we could ensure that we had insights from across our campus on the student experience of this resource. And once we understood what that student experience was going to be, then we had to look at, okay, what's our associate experience going to be? How are we going to ensure that we're meeting our students' needs in what we're developing as we work together and we work across with Straighterline? So we had numerous meetings across those 9 months in this development process. Some were led by Straighterline. A lot of them were led off to the side by Dana as we were putting this together. And we were able to create the pathways that we identified that we needed. We've since added more pathways. So this is not a stagnant process. There's really is an opportunity for your academy, especially in the case of Post Academy, to grow with the needs that you identify for your university or college, or more specifically for your students, because that's really who you're designing it for. Now, while we did launch in January, I will say we didn't get our stuff together and our legs under us until about April. And a lot of that was on our side, on Post side. We were trying to figure out, again, that referral process. We were trying to understand which students should be referred. And I think that it just took us a little bit to really understand the value of it and how to make the best use of our academy. And our goal, as we told our associates, as we tell anybody who wants to hear about Post Academy, is to create a clear pathway for prospective students, for current students, for dismissed students to connect or reconnect with Post University. That is the goal. Is they're not leaving the university. As Burke said, it is a white labeled experience. It feels as though they are at a post-university site. They're taking a Straighterline course, absolutely, but the entire time that they're registering and that they're a part of it, it feels as though they are still a post-Eagle, which is so important, or that they want to become a post-Eagle. And again, that connection piece as early as possible is the key. So we do have a number of pathways, as I mentioned. There are 3 that I am incredibly excited about. So I'm going to focus on those 3. And by the way, when you work with Straighterline, they let you name these pathways whatever you want. So depending on how creative you get, it can get a little bit weird. I think we toned it down a little bit from our first names. We have a back on track pathway. Now, as I mentioned, We have a foundation course sequence at Post, which is a sequence of courses that all of our new students need to take. And the purpose of our foundation course sequence is to support our adult learners as they learn to be learners again. Most of them have been out of school for quite some time, may not have gone to college at all, and they're looking back on their high school experience as their learning experience. And so our foundation course sequence is designed by the faculty to increase in rigor and expectation as you go through the first 3 courses, and then the 4th course is the first course in the major. So they're ready, they're prepared, they understand APA, they understand all those basic things that we expect them to have by the time they hit that first course. These are students who are adult students, as we've said. They have a lot of priorities in their life, particularly over the last 18 months or so, as we all have experienced, where college hasn't always been able to be at the top. They're working parents, they've got children that have high demands on them. Some of them have parents that are living with them. Some of them are not, they don't have homes, they're working out of their cars. You would be amazed. Actually, most of you won't attending this webinar, but for some folks, it is amazing to learn the backstory of our adult learners and what it is that they do in order to be able to go to school. But at the end of the day, they raised their hands. They said they wanted to learn. And the students who fall into this back on track program are students who have been dismissed after 2 terms, 2 8-week terms with a 0.0 GPA. Now, to me, that doesn't have anything to do with the academic capability of that student. It means that that student wasn't able to prioritize their work. It means that as they were going through those foundation course sequence experiences, they weren't able to dig in and do what it is that we were looking for them to do in those classes, and they stopped out in some capacity for non-participation. That's what 90% of these students are. And so this pathway allows students to go to Post Academy. We have 4 general education courses that have been identified for them. They take those 4 courses, they pass them, those credits come right on back to Post, and they return to Post in good academic standing, and they're ready to go to meet the rest of their educational goals. That has been a fantastic pathway for us. The second one I'm excited about is called our Course Pool for Dismissal pathway. Again, some of the names get a little bit weird, but when you hear about what this one's about, it'll make a little bit more sense. I mentioned that we have Satisfactory Academic Progress Specialists, SAP specialists, because so much of our focus is on our students who have fallen into disarray in terms of their ability to progress academically. And as I mentioned, in so many cases, it's not an academic problem. It's a time management problem, a prioritization problem, and problem is probably not the right word. Let's go with challenge. I saw Dana's comment at the very beginning, and I like that one. We'll call it a challenge. And so we do have this extensive efforts to support these students, but some of them do end up going from being on warning to being dismissed. And in some cases, even when we look at their appeal, we're unable to bring them back into the university. This pool, this pathway is for those students who otherwise would have been told, I'm sorry, you've appealed. We're not able to bring you back into the university, either because of a GPA concern or a pacing concern as it relates to Title IV funding. But what we're able to do now is that the dean can create an academic pathway that includes Post Academy, and it allows them to return to Post once they have completed that pathway. So that's been a very powerful one. The last one is our earned admissions pathway, and Burke alluded to this one earlier. Right now, this pathway is only available to our main campus students, but there's absolutely no reason that it couldn't be available to adult learners at another institution. So this is for students who have had some difficulty in high school leading to a GPA. And in many cases, again, I don't think of GPA as the only way that you assess whether or not somebody is capable at the college level. Excuse me one second. Elliot, you have to stop. Excuse me. Thank you. And so when we look at the earned admissions pathway, this is students who are looking for an alternative way to demonstrate their ability to meet the admissions requirement. And so we're able to send them to Post Academy. It feels like they're an Eagle. It feels like they're on their way to becoming an Eagle. And they take a set of courses that have been identified for them. As Burke mentioned, typically it's general education courses to demonstrate their ability, to show, yes, I'm absolutely ready to achieve at the college level. And when they come back, again, those credits transfer and we bring them right into the fold. So that has been a fantastic one for our students. If you give me just one moment. So what I do want to point out about each of these pathways is that they represent what would have previously been a dead end for a post-university student. Either you don't meet the admissions requirement, I'm sorry, could you please go take courses elsewhere to demonstrate you're capable of what we're looking for you to perform at post-university. I'm sorry, you've been dismissed, your appeal has been denied, I don't have another pathway for you. These are dead end situations, but no longer. Now we have a pathway to recommend. We have inspiration to give our students. There's a pathway to get them back on track after a false start or after any type of issue that they might have with achieving satisfactory academic progress, or a pathway to earned admissions, as the case may be. And what our folks love, we hate saying no to students, and so that they love so much about Post Academy is it's an opportunity to say yes to a student who would have otherwise been told no. And if you'll stick with me for just one more minute, I do want to share our newest pathway because it's completely different than the ones that I was just speaking to. Our newest pathway was developed to support the integration of our new college, the American Sentinel College of Nursing and Health Sciences. I mentioned that at the beginning. This pathway won't be available until December 1st. But since the acquisition, Post University acquired American Sentinel University. We brought all these wonderful faculty, all these wonderful students into the Post University fold. We do not currently have all of our students on a single student information system. We don't have all of our students on a single LMS. And so since we are in different LMSs, different systems, it's difficult for us to offer general education courses from our School of Arts and Sciences to students in our American Sentinel College of Nursing and Health Sciences. Until we have those aligned, Post Academy is a fantastic resource for us because it offers an easy pathway to ensure that our RN to BSN students can continue to have easy access to a large variety of general education courses. So that was a pathway that we didn't even dream of when we were first creating Post Academy, and it's been fantastic.
Great. Donna, tell us about CSU Pueblo.
So I think first I would just say that I hear Elizabeth talk and I think, okay, these are ways that Straighter Lines partnership with CSU Pueblo, how this is going to grow, the things that we can now add, I think moving forward. Our path, CSU's path to Straighter Line was maybe a little bit different. I think it started pre-pandemic quite a few years ago. Our former senior associate women's athletic director was brand new on campus, and she came to us and asked about, she'd worked with Straighter Lines, her athletes had worked with Straighter Line, and she was thinking about Straighter Line as a quick, affordable pathway for her athletes to get back in compliance, right? To be able to compete. And of course, as our NCAA person, you know, these were things that were top of her mind. And it was really funny. I knew nothing about this when it happened, by the way, but when she picked where she would go on campus, she started with, it makes perfect sense, the registrar's office. And the answer was no. Like, this is, they couldn't be anything quality. This is a registrar, not a faculty person. It couldn't be anything quality. We don't do that. We don't accept that. There's no option. And it just got shut down. And it wasn't, I don't think it was, you know, out of any kind of disinterest in helping students or not wanting to work with an athletic director. It was just the quick, easy answer because that's the way we had done it in the past. And it's sort of that standard kind of faculty line about anything that's new and different. We always are a little skeptical, right? So our registrar repeated the same sort of thing. So our Office of Admissions and our registrar really shut it down back then. What's funny is, skip ahead all these years, we do our Vision 2028, which is our 10-year new strategic plan. It includes this idea of enhancing the appeal of our campus, increasing student success, and developing our own people. And every single thing we do and have done since 2018 maps back to one of those wildly important goals. So for student experience, there's lots of things we're working on campus. It's not all about pathways. It's also about works, which is a work program where we're actually paying our students to do things like student teaching and those unpaid nursing clinicals, and we're raising money to do that kind of work. It's discovery, where we're really valuing the opportunity that freshmen and sophomores have at a campus like CSU Pueblo to have hands-on learning experiences in the classrooms with their biology professors. You know, I mean, these are things that at a bigger institution, you wait till you're in a grad program and then you vie for, 2 and 3 positions and you hope you get the TA position. Those are things that at a school like CSU Pueblo, schools like all of you are running, those are opportunities that happen early on. So how do we really maximize that? But for student experience, this is a concept of pathways, the way into a 4-year institution was something that we had already formed. We had a huge working group already that included our admissions director, our registrar, faculty representatives from every single college. It was all led by our VP of enrollment management, student affairs, and communication. So probably not a shock, right, that she was the one really going to be driving implementation of these various programs. But I think it's important to understand that we never at any point have thought that Straighter Line or any other program we would run on our campus was a one-off or would solve all of our problems. The idea was, how do we think of everything we're doing as an ecosystem? Because the truth is, that's what we want our students to think of too, right? Like the work that you do to make money actually can impact this academic journey, and the knowledge that you gain in our classrooms can give you other opportunities for work. And all of this makes you a more active and involved and engaged community member, which maybe makes our world a little better place and, you know, an ecosystem. So for us, we were already thinking about pathways. We had this collaborative cross-functional team already pulled together, led by our VP of Enrollment Management, but that included a lot of faculty voices. And we were talking about things, and these are now programs we've implemented around prior learning assessment. Right, it's a huge initiative in the state of Colorado right now, driven by our governor and the Department of Education here in Colorado. And so the idea maps so great to our concepts about work, right? How do you give a student credit for the work that they bring to your institution? But the one group that we weren't able to really address, it was that 10%. So this is why I say we approached it a little bit different than Elizabeth did. We don't have multiple academy concepts. We have our academy concept with Straighter Line, which in this moment is designed to be an alternative acceptance pathway for students to Colorado State University Pueblo. So for that 10% who apply that we will not be able to admit, they don't get a "you haven't been admitted" letter. They get a "congratulations. While we can't admit you to this traditional program at CSU Pueblo, you have been admitted to the Colorado State University Pueblo Academy." And Burke's point was a really good one, that nobody forces you to come up with a name, right? But we used the academy concept because we were already using pathways, and it turns out Straighter Line was too. So good partnerships, it takes a lot of them in an ecosystem to make these things happen. We already had bridge programs, right? We had these kind of traditional summer enrichment programs and ways to start addressing students who were at risk in various ways of stopping out or dropping out. So we also knew, because this is our environment, our culture here, that we didn't want to get in a battle about territory or what was accepted and what wasn't. The good news is these were courses that our faculty approved. They did mean credit if you were accepted into the academy and you finish these things, but we were able to move really, really quickly because we weren't trying to take territory that other people were already exploring. So for us, addressing it to begin with as one way, these were students who, keep in mind, we tell them we can't accept them. You don't have the scores, you don't meet our standard admissions criteria. We're sending them other places anyway. They're not coming back to us. We don't see them again. It isn't like they're like, "Oh, well, too bad I didn't make it to CSU Pueblo. I'll see y'all again in 2 or 3 or 4 years." It doesn't happen. You never see them again. And in fact, for every no that they get, we know they're twice as likely to say no and just opt out of an education altogether. So the more opportunities you give them to say yes and to find that pathway for them, the better. So I think that was really a really important thing. The other thing is that it meant we could be really speedy in setting this up. Our first real conversations started last spring, and we launched the academy this fall. Because we already had that cross-functional team set up. We were already having these messy conversations about what was acceptable and what meant students ready for college and a college ready for the students. These were already the messy conversations happening. So that was a really luck of timing, I think, and really proved, in rhetoric, we call it Kairos. It's the perfect time and place where everything just kind of coalesced and came together. It was a real good opportunity for us. But the other thing that I guess that I would add to all of this is that I just completely lost my train of thought. Isn't that exactly what happens? We are our students, right? Our kids walk into our
I was just going to say, my son walked in. I mean, come now.
Our kids walk into our webinars. We have a brilliant thing we're going to say next. But I do think that there are multiple opportunities to start talking about how do we serve students better, and Straighter Line is one of those. And for us, it was sort of the perfect moment to start having those conversations. So here's where we are and what we're doing. Part of this is that our Colorado State University, a former vice provost, actually wound up going to Straighter Line as their chief academic officer. She already had a lot of credibility among our faculty. She had helped build these online programs for Colorado State. And so I think that changed the conversation a little bit too. It gave us a different pathway into those conversations, if you will, with our faculty, and was a sort of odd moment in time too. So I guess that's where I'll stop for the moment, and happy to answer any questions.
Let me answer a couple of things that have come up in the chat box, and I'll just answer them directly. So one question was about credit transferability. So Straight-Line's not a college. We're not allowed to be a college. We don't offer degrees. So therefore, you're not allowed to be accredited. If you can't be accredited, you can't access Title IV. And that's fine, because we can do other things that colleges can't. That's kind of the point of having sort of these combo programs. So students typically are paying out of pocket on a subscription basis to the college under their brand. But there are ways to get what can't be financial aid eligible. There are ways to kind of get to the same outcome. Because the price is less than your typical course, dramatically less, students have an incentive to pay if they can, because they will save money in the long term. But some students just can't, even those, that amount is too much. And I don't think either CSU Pueblo or Post has done this, but it's something that I think is really compelling, is that you could create a process where students essentially fill out an application for free access to the academy, some sort of friction in the process where they have to write a 3-paragraph essay or a 5-paragraph essay or whatever it is, and you give them free access, because the value isn't the $150 a month. The value is that you get the student in the program for the next 4 years or whatever it is. So the schools should have a strong incentive to put as many people into this program as possible. And so you can get to the same outcome as offering financial aid without having to actually offer financial aid. Another question is about credit transferability. So the same source of the same answer is that we're not a college, therefore we don't have regionally accredited college transcripts. We and been part of the AC credit recommendation service for years. I've been through it 20 some times. And then on top of that, we have formal articulation agreements with a lot of different colleges. Though for this conversation, for white labeled partnerships, that's really kind of the last resort that you want to have to give to a student, because you want them to come to your college. And if they take this coursework in your academy and they want to go somewhere else, yeah, we can accommodate that. And it's a kind of I guess it's an insurance policy, if you will, but it's something that comes up very, very rarely, because these are students who you want at your college and you want to sort of bring them in. But the courses in some level have decent transferability, though not as much as a kind of a regionally accredited transcript would.
I would add just two little kind of logistics decisions that we made at CSU Pueblo to give you examples for exactly what Burke is talking about. We decided early on the price point with Straighter Line was very, very affordable, but we also know very clearly, we have a list of like 1,036 students who we know have stopped out and dropped out for various reasons. There are initiatives to work to get them back into the institution, but using them as an example of what our new student cohorts could look like in the academy, we know that money is a hurdle, right? It's going to be a challenge. So making sure that this is affordable is really, really important. That being said, we also knew, to my earlier point, you got to have a way to actually get them into your campus. So everything is streamlined. It's branded CSU Pueblo on the website. They are a CSU Pueblo student in every regard. They become part of our campus community in some really specific ways. And while Straighter Line is providing all of the sort of stand-up wraparound services, things that we couldn't stand up or afford to cover, I mean, at all, this wasn't even an option. In fact, one of the ways that we dealt with some of the early pushback, and we had one dean in particular who's dynamic, savvy business leader, member of the faculty, but she also runs our revenue generating academic enterprise extended studies. We brought her to the table early on because we knew that she was going to say, now you're encroaching into my territory, right? And you're going to beat me price point wise. And maybe you don't do the same good stuff for students that I can do. Okay, these are fair conversations. Well, let's have them. And so we said, well, what would you do? Like, because we're talking about this student population, we're not going to go to these other populations you're already working with. And just like, okay, that's fair. So that changed the conversation. She said, yeah, but I could do this, right? She's very forward-thinking, revenue generating dean. I can do this. And we said, okay, well, so what would it cost? Well, 24/7 help desk, tutoring systems available 24/7. What does that cost? That person power, or the other partnerships, the numerous third-party partnerships you'd have to create in order to provide those for a group of students who are just provisionally accepted in some small way to the institution. They live in this offshoot of extended studies. And the answer, of course, was something like $1.7 million just to kick it off. Right. That wasn't the investment we had to make, but we knew that we still needed an infrastructure once we could stand up the academy to transition those students seamlessly into our 4-year degree programs. So with that in mind, even though we were interested in price, we upped our costs. So to do the academy at CSU Pueblo, it's $180 a month, right? So it gives us that little bit of money that actually helps us create a system and a team that help become touch points at CSU Pueblo, not for their success in the academy, because that's why we have Straighter Line. They're the experts in that regard. But it's to make sure that they're taking the right choice, they're making the right choices, they're taking the right things to have that pathway if they want to be in nursing eventually. If their goal is to be an English major, we want them to have an easy way into that and to make good decisions. And we want to be there by their side when they're doing that. So that was an important piece. But now to the second half of my title, operations. I have nothing to do with implementation. I am not the provost. I am not the VP of enrollment management. I'm the one that brings partnerships to the table and tries to think about how these would strategically impact our students or our campuses and how we could work together collaboratively to make it happen. Advancement is the second part. Right. And I will just tell you that we have about 3 different opportunities brewing right now with our advancement team that work out of Denver, who are working on really serious investments from donors and friends who love the concept of the academy. And our very simple kind of one-dimensional way we're approaching this just in this moment, knowing that all of the things Beth describes are ways we can grow and expand with our Straighter Line partnership. They are interested in, yeah, okay, the work that a Hispanic serving institution that we're 49% minority serving, by the way, does for the state of Colorado, the way we impact workforce development in this community is serious. I care about that. I care about how you're serving students who otherwise don't have a way to get that degree. I would like to invest in that. And you can invest a little and change a student's trajectory to college. And that is a very compelling argument that we're hearing a lot of really positive things for. So at the same time, we made a choice to add a little bit of cost to this to make sure we could do what we said we would do for students. We are looking very, very quickly and very carefully to stand up some really serious donor-funded scholarships to make sure that the academy was something we were helping to fund for individual students. So I think that's a real opportunity that any school could look at, because this is very easy to explain. It requires a partnership. These are courses that are approved by our faculty, and yet the infrastructure needed is very low. And donors don't want to invest in infrastructure. They don't care about your IT. They don't care about online courses. They don't care about faculty development. Donors care about a student experience, and they want to understand how that student experience will change a community, how it changes a family and work in a community, a state. So it's a very strategic approach to how we actually fund this. And one we're taking very seriously. We're just in the early stages, the first few months of this academy for us at CSU Pueblo, but I think there are big things ahead.
One note to add there, Donna, and then also I'll add a couple questions that have come in over the transom. One is my belief, and it's my gut as opposed to anything kind of formal, is that what you're describing among your donors is something that the rest of the world sees. So your donors see it, students see it, parents see it. We all saw it during the pandemic. I've got a sophomore in college, and is he going to go back to college and pay full price for an online experience? You said, well, really? I'm going to pay that? And so everyone sees this and kind of wonders what the solutions are that colleges are going to bring. And then looking at this as kind of a full ecosystem that they are providing makes a ton of sense. And, one of the things that I have believed, and I'm not sure if any other people believe me or not, but we'll see, is that, one of the things that we saw during the pandemic was that the successful institutions typically were they were online and they were lower priced. So enrollments typically dropped, but the ones that didn't were those kind of large national online programs that had lower prices. And this is a way to start to have a low price point in the marketplace. A couple of things have come over the transom. One was and actually just disappeared from the question section. Maybe it was answered by somebody.
Oh, I might have answered it. It was if they were counted, if we reported them as students. Yeah.
Yeah. What was your answer?
I said no. So we count them, we understand, but it's just like we have Department of Corrections students who are enrolled through extended studies. They're not traditionally in our courses here, they're not necessarily counted in quite the same way. We say we are Colorado is kind of odd in this regard. We count ourselves as a 4,000 student campus, but if you count all of our students who are in fully online programs through extended studies, not the online programs that now have developed all over campus, right? Thanks to the pandemic, but they're not counted in our IPEDS reporting at all. So,
so one question, is there a transfer maximum for straight line credits for post and CSU?
We
Yes,
have
if I
a
remember,
very
please go
specific.
ahead, Donna.
Oh, sorry, Elizabeth, go ahead.
Oh, honestly, go. I got it.
we don't, because we have a very set academy, and this is the way you will start in the academy. So we haven't had to put those caps. I imagine those are things we would explore when we start to expand in the way Elizabeth's campus has done. But in this moment, no, because there's already sort of a self-regulating mechanism in place, because here are their options and it's what they can do. We're also not trying to recruit regularly enrolled students. So we're not competing with other general education programs on campus. That's incredibly important, right? Especially to our gen ed serving programs that may have fewer majors. I'll use my home department of English as a good example. You know, maybe they have 58, 60 majors. They serve a whole teacher ed community, but they serve 1,000 students across campus in general education courses. So they were very, very interested, rightly so, in were we going to be, co-opting those students and offering them a much less expensive online version of the same classes. Those are not the students we're targeting. Those are not options for us. Those students would not be admitted into the academy. That was an important piece of getting faculty buy-in for us too.
So at Post, the academy and the transfer of credits from the academy is handled just as we would transfer any credits from straighter line. And that falls under our transfer policy, which is 30 credits for a bachelor's degree, 15 credits for an associate's degree. And the only place where there's any real limitation on it is that we do not transfer credits into the last 30 credits of the degree, because there is a residency requirement that those last 30 credits are completed at Post University.
Just to note that those, pick up on one of the things that Donna said, is that and really just to reinforce it, is that by putting it under the school's brand and letting the school decide who gets referred to it and essentially who is exposed to the academy, that eliminates a lot of the sort of political problems that you might have at the school. And it says that, hey, it basically allows you to refer students to the academy that you otherwise would not have gotten. And it becomes kind of a net positive, as opposed to sort of everyone competing for the same pie.
No, that is very, very true. Chemistry is another department where we expected some really specific pushback, because they're already very concerned that we're admitting students who are not going to pass some prerequisite math courses. And so they think they're going to track into certain degree programs, and there's just not a way. Our argument in the beginning was, these are not students we're getting anyway. We are never seeing these students. We are targeting students who have opted out and have now, as Elizabeth said, raised their hand and said, I might be interested. And instead of just sending them elsewhere because they still just don't meet our minimum criteria, we're actually giving them an alternative. And we're not putting them in a math class at CSU Pueblo. That's also important when we start talking about resource management and what kind of wraparound services, because our faculty will tell you more students would probably pass XYZ courses if we had 24/7 help desk, if we had 24/7 tutoring available. Those are things we're trying to address right now, because that will be good for all students.
I highly recommend it. It's awesome.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's very, very good. And I think somebody had just asked about, do the students have to pay for that credit? And I think Burke already answered, but that's an important piece too. These are transferable courses. We've all agreed that these are transferable courses. So they transfer to CSU Pueblo. It's not as though, we charge our Pueblo Community College students when we transfer their Pueblo Community College courses for our CSU Pueblo equivalent. So that's a really important thing too.
One other element about the private label model is we have 60 some courses, but if you're doing an academy approach where you're only 4 or 6, whatever it is, you don't have to approve all the courses. You could just, you can take the 4 or the 6 that makes sense. And we have a state system we work with where they had 9 colleges, and to get them to agree on a common set of courses they're all going to accept as transfers, like herding cats. And so, we sort of settled to about, there was, I think, 12 courses that all would agree would transfer.
That's not bad.
That was bad. It took a long time. A lot of cat herding.
That's not bad at all, though. You got to 12. That's pretty good.
We were happy. And then, but that's enough, to build whatever, because that's really all you're doing. It's kind of the entry pathway for certain types of students.
Right.
So we've got about 5 minutes. Other questions from people? Put it in the chat. Put it in the Q&A.
While we're waiting on questions, can I speak to some of the metrics from Post just to give folks a
please.
feel?
Yeah, absolutely.
I brought some of them just in case you'd be interested. So at Post, we have about 20,000 students. About 1,000 of them are on our main campus. So there aren't a lot of students looking for the earned admissions pathway at this point. But I did want to give you a feel, and I'm looking at my notes right now for what we see. Based on the various pathways that we have about 160 to 170 students that are referred. Now, remember, these are students that don't have another pathway at Post University. And so this is the way that we can get them back. And those folks are referred to Post Academy, total of about 1,000 since we began. And of those 1,000 students, we have had 71 students that have registered for Post Academy courses. 53 of those 71 have completed 1 or more courses, and 6 have already returned to Post to continue working on their degree. So that's in the infancy of this program. That's the first 4 to 6 months where many of these pathways take probably about 6 months to complete. We already have about 6 students that have returned to us and are back in the fold at Post University. So if you look at that 71 students to 6, just under 10% in 6 months have returned to us of the students who have registered at Post Academy. And I will also like to just comment that the straighter line advisors and tutors are absolutely fantastic. They're very patient with our Post University advisors and tutors who are constantly trying to check in and find out how our students are doing. They provide all kinds of reporting because there are various ways that you can work with straighter line on this. You can choose to have straighter line handle it soup to nuts, but the way that I was able to get our advisors comfortable with it was to ensure that there was a pass back and forth of data around the students and their success in these courses so that we could reach out to these students and provide support and encouragement as they were working through Post Academy. So I just wanted to point out there's a lot of different ways this can be done.
And on the metrics, we have another school we work with on an academy model, and it's rough and it's a little more mature, but about 30%, and it's the same, it's an earned admission model. About 30% of the students they referred into it ultimately did enroll at the college and then persisted at greater rates than their peers, which was kind of the next big, sort of like they might get in, but do they stay? And the answer is yes. And really that shouldn't be a surprise because it aligns with what we know about students that bring prior learning credit, students that bring transfer credit. They tend to succeed at greater rates than their peers. And kind of what you're doing with all of this is letting students make a low risk, low cost decision before having to make a high risk, high cost decision. And we're seeing it, whether it's, these are private label academy models, but you're also seeing it in, BYU has a pathway program and micro credentials. It's the same philosophy as do something sort of prove at a low cost, low risk basis. And that gives you a better basis for making your next decision.
I have 2 books that I'll recommend for this group that I think were really important to us when we first launched the concepts of pathways, where we really got messy talking about all the different, and let's just to be clear, we didn't talk about ways students could get to the university. The way we started that conversation a couple of years ago was what were the roadblocks and what were the things we weren't doing to ensure that we really were accessible and affordable. That's a hard conversation, right? Because you're looking in the mirror and going, we're not doing all the things we've promised to do, or our philosophy doesn't match our action. And I think, that's a tough conversation to have. So it requires a lot of education. It requires creating some common language as a campus. This is the world I live in, is how do we start planning strategically, but also creating a culture on our campus that can sustain these things. So 2 of the books that I'll just reference, this one is called Demographics and the Demand for Higher Education. I'll write this in the chat. It's by Nathan D. Graw. And it's important. It drives, it vets and validates the kind of work that we're all trying to do. And it's good. I would call it's a good translator for our faculty colleagues who are really invested in this idea that it's not just about a job. It can't just be about this tangible, you take accounting, you become an accountant. That's a very clear kind of track for a student. Some of it just has to be about learning for learning's sake, right? How do you talk to a faculty about the realities for a modern student if they're stuck in this idea that you should just want to be in this classroom and learn this awesome stuff because it matters just to know it? Which it's true, it does. But what does that actually turn into, and how are students approaching this investment opportunity of education? Because it is a serious investment of time, of money, of energy, right? So this book helps make that argument: demographics and the demand for higher education. The other, on a whole different sphere, is by Tressie McMillan Cottom. She's got a great Twitter. If you're on Twitter, you should go follow her right now. She's hilarious and inappropriate. She wrote this book. It's called Lower Ed. She started her academic career recruiting students for for-profit institutions, and she is a faculty member now. So it's really a little bit about her journey, but it's a lot of data, information told through a story-like lens about the choices students make to pick your institution over some other institution and where they go when they're done. So it's called Lower Ed, The Troubling Rise of the For-Profit Colleges in the New Economy. So I'll put both of these in the chat, but I think we bought both of these books for our entire campus, just to start giving us some common language and a common path forward for all of us for the conversations.
Very cool. So I think we're out of time. If our Kale hosts want to confirm that or say anything.
Yes. Unfortunately, we've reached the end of the hour, but I have to say this has been a very valuable hour for me, and I'm sure for lots of our attendees. So thank you so much for sharing all your wonderful insights. This has been really informative.
Thank you. Well, thank you, Elizabeth. Thank you, Donna. Thank you, Kale. And it was fun. We'll have to do it again sometime.
Awesome. Thank you all so much. And thanks to everybody for joining us. We'll send out a recording within the week. Thank you, Donna, Elizabeth, and Burke for being on. This was great. Have a great afternoon.
Thank you so much. Good luck, everybody. Thank you.
Bye, everyone.